Welcome to another Med Zero video. This one's on suturing and some basic stuff about suturing. So, just like I've talked about in some other videos, what's the whole point of suturing? A lot of people don't know that, and it took me a little bit of time in medical school myself to actually understand what was the whole point of suturing. So, what's the point of suturing? It's when you have a cut, either one that you've made or somebody got by mistake. When you have a cut in the skin, the point of suturing is to bring the edges together and connect them in a way so that the body can do its own thing. So that's the whole point, is that you're bringing the two parts of the skin together and holding them there, and then letting the body do the rest of the work on rebuilding the connection and building the tissue back in the middle. Now, if you remember that purpose, it helps you with everything else. That's why you don't pull too hard. The whole point of suturing is to just bring them together. If you pull it super tight, you can end up with something called necrosis. And necrosis is a fancy term that you learn in medicine, and there's a phrase. So close, don't necrose. It might be spelled with a Z. I don't think so. I bet it's just an S. So close, don't necrose. So we talk about closing the wound, but not necrosing it, not pulling so tight when you make your knots that you're pulling it super tight. Okay? Now, so the way it works, if you have a standard laceration, you basically just start usually in the middle. Now the reason you do that is because you can usually tell where the middle is. If you were to start on the end and start stitching, sometimes you might go off, and next thing you know, you realize you're down towards the bottom of the cut, and you've got a short side of skin and a long side of skin that still has yet to be sewed together. And if you do it that way, then you're going to end up with a bit of a bumpy spot. So usually, you just start in the middle. So here's our cut in the skin. So we're looking at the skin. You find a place in the middle, and then that's where you're going to put your cut. So there's always a nice distance, and it's kind of hard to say exactly what it is, what's the right distance, but you don't want to be usually right on the edge, and you don't want to be so far crazy back from the edge of the wound that you're taking this huge chunk of skin, unless it's important, and it depends on the area. But for a standard cut, let's say on the front of your forearm, you probably want to be, I don't know, probably just like 3 to 4 millimeters from the edge approximately. So you're going to be going in here through down through the skin and across the wound, and then you're going to go back through the other side and come up through. I'll go through that in a little bit more detail in a second, but you're going to end up then with a stitch, and the stitch is going to be across the surface and down through, coming up here. And then you're going to tie a knot. And it's going to look like that. And when it's all actually done, when you've done that part, this is what it's really going to look like once it's all tied. The stitch is going to be across, here's your knot, and you're not really going to be able to see that underneath the surface, the stitch material has gone through and is holding it together. And then you're going to cut it in half again, and in half again, and maybe in halves again, and until the whole area is filled. What you're looking for on any repair job is to make sure that that all along there's no gaps. If you end up with an area where there is a gap, say you've got stitches like this and this, that says you should throw in another one typically. So you put in another stitch there to close that gap. Now, down on somebody's leg, you might have little small areas of gap, and that's okay, just because the skin is thicker and bigger and so on. So this is in general what you're going for. You're trying to close it, don't necrose it. That's the whole purpose. Now I'm going to give you a side view of what things look like. So this is somebody's body. This is their top surface with hair growing out of it. This is like the skin. It's a cut view. Here's the cut, and then this is a side view through the layer of the skin. Okay? Sound good? Great. So what happens is that you'll insert the needle around here. You're going to go down through the surface. You're going to come out through the surface, and then you're going to go in again sort of like at around the same spot. So when you look at it, if it came out here, you're going to go in around the same spot on the other side. And you're going to go bring the suture back up through, and then it's going to come out the other side. Now, there's a key little trick. So nice little trick of the trade is how do you actually do this with the suture? The key thing is somebody really clever came up with making curved sutures. I haven't looked it up, my apologies. So that the needle is actually curved. It's got a nice sharp point here on the end. It's not a fish hook, it's just sharp. And then the thread is attached right there. And what you do is you use your needle drivers, which are kind of like fancy tweezers, and you clamp on approximately 2/3 of the way along. This is your sweep point. So that if this is your suture, if this is your needle, you clamp on your needle driver at around 2/3 from the tip. And then whenever you insert it, and you're going to get good at this, you don't insert it straight down or shove it across. You do it in a curve. And so you want to be one with the curve. So this is the curve of the needle. And as you put the needle down through the skin, you will curve your hand so that the flow of the needle, you're doing it in a circle, the exact same circle or arc that the needle actually is. And as a result, you'll find this is the key skill to learn, is doing this. And so when a doctor who's used to suturing, or anybody who's used to suturing, you'll see them do this a lot with their hand, this motion. Now, the good news is you can do it with your other hand if you're left-handed, and sometimes you even do it backhanded. You know, there's times where, for whatever reason, if I'm going to do a fancy suture, which we'll come to, or otherwise, I might even backhand, or it's an awkward location, something like that. So the key thing is, though, is getting the curve down. And sutures come in different sizes. So when you've got a very small needle, and the needle's really small, you're going to have an even tighter curve. But you'll get used to that. Okay? And let me just double check. Am I missing anything? Those are some key things. We're dealing with sharps now at this point. So these are, pokey things. Nobody wants to get stuck. So make sure you take care of your own sharps. Usually the way we say is that everybody's responsible for their own sharps. So if you leave a needle around, no, you pick it up and you put it into the biohazard. And usually you would use your needle forceps to do that, needle driver to do that, to pick it up and plop it into the sharps bucket so that nobody gets stuck with the needle. Okay, so those are some key things. The purpose of suturing is to bring the edges together, snug but not tight, just snug, so that then the body can do its own thing and heal between the skin edges. And the key thing to do is doing that curve with the needle, and then life is easy when you do that. When you shove it through and you bend your needle, it gets to be a real pain and it's quite frustrating. And you'll do it. I mean, I've bent needles over the years. And even nowadays, I might sometimes bend a needle because of somebody thick skin or whatever. But typically, you really want to go for that curve, and you'll never bend a needle, and all will be well. Take care. Suturing, basic suturing is on Monday, either Monday morning or Monday afternoon. Bye-bye.